Okay, I'll be right back. Karl, you're up.
Right. So it seems that we are making the introductions today. We are a minute late or so because there are always things that needs to be done. See, I can see that there are people on the chat. I just can't read the chat from here. So
Blind you are. You need to go see an eye doctor. What did you do this week?
well, it's the ordinary thing. I guide people. I teach them how to throw axes at sometimes completely frozen targets where you have no chance in hell of getting the axe
How
to
did
stick.
they do today? I saw we had a bunch of people in.
And today it was warm, so the axe throwing target worked fine. I had two impressive Australian ladies who managed it in first and second attempt respectively. It's probably because I'm a good teacher.
I'm sorry, what? Yeah.
Or maybe Australian girls are just naturally violent.
Oh no, I think Australian women are just naturally violent. What do the New Zealanders think of that? Oops, there, I have to turn off my microphone in here. Or my speaker. There we go. Okay, now I have the chat up. And then hopefully my link is still stable. I think I might need to reload. There it goes. Okay, now it's reload. So Audrey was here first. She came on real quick. I managed to get this up about 1 hour early. Not really, but kind of. I made tea today for me. And then Arlene is here in Canada. Oh, so Audrey, you're back in Trondheim now? She's everywhere. She's like a world traveler now. She's like, I think she's gone around the globe at least twice this year. She sent me a link, by the way, for a market that we'll have to look at. She says, I was saying, I mentioned on there that, the cover picture I took yesterday, and I'm really glad I did, because that snow arrived yesterday, and it's been gone by this morning because it started raining, and it was really windy. How was it down in the village?
It was pretty windy, but it's not what I would consider to be wind.
No fences fell down this time?
Some things blew away. The skins on the benches around the fire were all wet.
Those should have been picked up anyway. Yeah.
They should have been, but they were not. So, some small things kind of blew away.
Yeah. And then, we had a lot of wind. I don't know how that affected. Oh yeah, didn't that make a group late or something? No, I can't remember what. Anyway, no, it actually blew enough up here. We're just a little bit higher, but because there's no open air next to us and it's more narrow here, I never know if it blows more here or more down there.
The thing is, back home, wind that blows skins off a bench isn't wind.
No.
Are the houses still standing?
Oh, the houses are still. We used to have. I mean, when the wind hits really hard down in the village, then the big fences cave in, or sometimes it will actually pull the big heavy bathroom doors open and suck out the toilet paper. That's on a really high windy day.
But both of those things are things that never ever would have been built where I'm from.
No.
Because they would have been.
In Selja, is where you're from.
They would have been toothpicks in one winter. Probably the first proper wind, it would be gone.
I just noticed James is testing us again, so I have to look it up. Okay.
I'm guessing that's a test of you.
That's a James, a test of us. Yep, James is always challenging us. Okay, hi Karin and Karl. I'm working on a chambira woven technique that I found yesterday. So chambira is spelled Chambira, so I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. And if I look at woven, I have to see what it says on Google. Oh, these look, if I'm finding the right thing anyway, it's like palm weaving and things. You can see, but there's a little difference. There's like they're baskets and things too, but they look like they're made mostly with plant fiber, but that could just be the luck of my Googles. So, and then it comes to this other, it shows another one, but I don't think this has anything to do with the price of eggs, but it's that coil with a rope where you wrap a coil around and then you either sew it in place by taking stitches over the coil, around the coil every once in a while into the previous row, or you crochet around the rope. But that just comes up as a combined search because probably the picture looks a little similar to the other ones, but that one's not weaving. But the other ones are definitely woven, so I think that's what he's referring to. I have not tried that since, this will be fun, my Catholicism days. I went to private school, private Catholic school for about 14 years of my life, and I've been recovering ever since. But one of the things we did every time around Palm Sunday was learn how to weave palms. So that was, I don't even know if I could still do. I know I can make those little chains that you kind of fold one over this way, then this way, and then
Oh,
that
you
way.
little
You
bastard.
got attacked by a cat in the groin too.
No, it's my hand. He doesn't like it when I move my hand.
So we used to make these like ribbons out of it, but they kind of, I don't know what that effect is called anyway. But when you have one run like that, and then the next row it goes like this, and then like that. So it kind of makes like.
It might also just have been the changing of the gods.
It could be the other cat is coming in now. You're being eyeballed.
Come on.
He's scoping. Anyway, but the coil one actually, I kind of want to try those too, though. That's, but I don't think that's the same technique. But you can cut up strips of old jeans or fabric if you have like cotton fabric, and if you from quilting, for example, and if you don't think it's going to be thick enough when you kind of roll it, you can actually wrap the fabric around a piece of rope so you never see the rope, and then you basically just stitch that into place. It's called coil, that one. But I'm assuming the two techniques are not exactly the same there, because one of them is definitely woven. So anyway, thank you for the challenge, James. It's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. Audra says, she said, I don't know how it feels outside. I'm still not completely covered from pneumonia. Audra, stop getting bad sicknesses. No. But hopefully you're feeling better anyway. Antibiotics help a lot now. I think I've had pneumonia at least twice in my life. You've had it a couple times.
Yeah, it's not fun, particularly not when you use your voice for a living. So
yeah. Let's see. So now it's kind of like upgraded to a really, really nasty cold with respiratory issues, but it can quickly get out of control. So feel better and take it easy. Nella's here from Finland. Albert's here from Norway. Charlotte is here also from Norway in time with her eggplants. Love, heart, eggplant, and a laughing emoji. She's playing in the rain and the wind in Bergen. So if it's rainy and windy here, it's really going to be rainy and windy in Bergen.
I talked to the Romanian guy when he came with his group this morning. He's looking at the flag, basically standing straight out and just going blip, 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 blip. He said, yeah, at least it's not as windy as Bergen.
No, this is true. Nikki's here from New Zealand, and she brought yarn again at the medieval market and a wee kimono wheel, kumuhimo wheel. So she's milking, and she's still making leg warmers. Leg warmers can take some time, but they're definitely worth it, and it's a really good cheat if you want to have socks that show, but you don't want to actually do the whole foot. I was going to say when you're doing reenactment, because if you're not taking your shoes off, nobody actually sees the foot. So a faster way to do it would be to make leg warmers, and then you can make the really tall ones. Audra made thigh-high socks once. I thought it was fun. So she was a racy Viking. She had the big thigh-high. They were cool, and they were white, which is brave in itself. PJ's here. They just had what they were calling the worst storm in 10 years. It largely missed where PJ is, but just a few downed trees around here. That's in UK, I believe. I think we were supposed to get hit with something, but we didn't really. Oh, and Albert says hello to the cats. Audra says she also bought yarn, a lot of yarn, 15 kilos of pure untreated wool. I like Audra. That's my kind of person. What are you going to do with it, though? She nalbound a whole dress, too. Audra's crazy. I nalbound my kid, but Audra nalbound herself. It's, if you haven't seen that one anyway, she did last year with and then she put the color of the month in there as well. So there's a little, like a rose it's kind of almost like a rainbow row from the color of the month. By the way, if you're doing the color of the month, it's green, anything green. I made a hat, but it's in the store now. That's on a cover a couple of weeks ago. This one has specks of green in it, though, so that kind of counts. And the stitch of the month is Telemark, which looks like that. Actually, that was the back side. It looks like that. It's a little bit more ridge on this side, if you can see it from the side there. But we'll show that again later. I'm having a hard time, I noticed that with Telemark. I absolutely love Telemark, but I like Dalby, and I do Dalby more. But my fingers always want to go back to Dalby. They're very closely related. It's just one little mistake difference, so I have to keep forcing myself not to do the mistake. But I did mix up my loops, which I showed last week as well, and my eye just keeps going straight to it. Of course, do you think I could find it now? Yeah, that one. That one is a mistake, so I will put some embroidery on this one. A little swirl or something. Let's see, is it back up here? Prude is using the Telemark stitch. Prude is coming in from Poland, by the way, originally from South Africa. She's here using Telemark stitch with cotton string to make straps so that she can put a cover on her weighted blankets. She would love it if chat suggested some names for her weighted blanket. I feel it needs like a name. Do you have names for? I kind of want to call it the polar bear. What color is it? Pruda has a history with polar bears. That's all I'm gonna say. But okay, yeah. So you got to come up with a name for it. Oh, Suze already came up with a name, like Winifred. Suze is chiming in from U.S. Max is here as well. So apparently, Max's family and they are celebrating their nephew's 6th birthday later today. Happy birthday to the nephew. Robert Reynolds here from Glasgow. The weather has calmed down today, but still wet, but not quite as windy as yesterday. Yeah, I think he's having similar weather to us. Roger's in from Huntington Beach. We're expecting a rainstorm tonight. Rhonda Hagman has finished and from you, Rhonda Hagman's from Minnesota as well, where I'm originally from. Just finished hand-spun Oslo mittens, like 5 years late. How did that go, by the way? Because the last time I took like a 3-year hiatus from a project and picked it up, I realized my gauge changed. So I was kind of surprised. So I was doing mom and stitch with this fat yarn, and then when I come back to it, all of a sudden, same yarn and everything, but my stitch was so much tighter. I did like 3 rows and realized it was doing this, so I had to like pick it out and do it all over again and I was able to recover it. I just had to force myself to do it a little bit more loosely. So hopefully you didn't have that issue. Yours worked. Okay, worked fine. Good. Good to know. You're a consistent null binder then. I am apparently fairly inconsistent. Audrey's got a plan to dye, dye yarn with plants from Odense Festival. Oh, that's going to be, or she has a plan to do that with the wool. That'll be so pretty. Are you going to do that in the village? I was talking to Nella earlier this week. For some reason, we decided to stay up all night. But she was dyeing wool with snow. And I need to try that one. I have not tried it before. So I got super excited because that's the day it kind of started snowing in the evening. I said, I'll have to wait for it to snow. But it was gone so fast, and I never got to try it. And then I was wondering if I used something I had here, because I guess it gets more diluted much more quickly. So you need a bit stronger dyes. So then I thought maybe I'd try it with the Kool-Aid that I bought like 15 years ago from United States that needs to get used. But I didn't get to try it, so I have to see. Nella has to post pictures though, because I've never tried dyeing with snow before, but I thought that would be fun. I think we got on the conversation because we were talking about cold dyeing, that you could do cold dyeing and just dye in jars and such. Since the electricians were here, we haven't gotten a new stove fan, so it's hard to boil water for long periods of time in here. We need to get Karl a beer. He's dying over there. So we're using the wobbly glass because it goes in the dishwasher and Karl can't. But this one is actually based on a find. If I put up like a thing here, you can see there better how it has a wobbly base kind of thing. We found out that works pretty well in grass, so that, where regular wine glass would just like tip over. But so he has to be a little careful when he fills it, because no matter how you put it down, it will wobble. But at least that one is safe to put in the dishwasher. Scan glass makes that one.
It's based on a find, but I don't know which or where.
Yeah.
I believe they are Viking, but
They're Viking age according to scan glass, but
I'm actually not sure.
No. Okay, so you can have your beer, and your beer today is Slogen Fjellbock Troll Bryggeria, or the Troll Brewery. So this one is Is this one Icelandic or Norwegian? I'm assuming it's Fra vakre og ville norske fjorder. It's from the wild and beautiful Norwegian fjords. And this one is, you look at them, just keep grabbing for the beer. 7% alcohol. You can read the back if you want to, but it's hard to see the black on blue.
I immediately get slogan. Yes, it's actually called slogan, which is not a good word in Norwegian.
No?
It means fish guts.
Oh, this sounds like a fun one. You're going to have fish gut beer. Is this going to be any better than I'm having chai from Normal. According to my kid, they changed the recipe, but I still drink it and like it. So, but this one's vanilla. I don't know if you've ever had these. It's like a sugar bomb. It's so good. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to stitch while you see if I remember which stitch I was doing too before I start switching back to Dalby. No cats were harmed with bottle caps flying, although it did twitch. Then I misplaced my little skinny white bone needle. You thought I was going to talk about you, didn't you? So I'm using a yarn needle today. You can use one. So anybody who's trying to nalbind from beginning, you don't need to go and invest a needle right away.
If I thought you were talking about me, I would be worried.
Skinny white bone.
That's correct, but when you have to specify that you're talking about the skinny white one, then it indicates that there might be more.
Okay. Uh-oh.
I have 2 cats. That usually doesn't turn out.
No, and you opened a beer, which for some reason this one seems to show up. So do your cats do this? Anybody who's got cats? One of them sits quite nicely. The other one comes up and he's like, look, I'm nice. I'm just going to clean you a little bit and then it'll be fine. And then, so he kind of cleans up the whole cat. It could be the other one doing this too. Usually it's this one doing it to the other one. And then after he determines that he's clean enough, he then bites him in the neck so that he has to screw off and then he can take his nice spot. But that one gave up rather easily over there. So how do you like your fish gut? Oops, this way. There we go.
Both smells and tastes good.
Yeah?
It's very little carbonization going on here.
Really? In a beer.
Do you see any foam?
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Oh, actually, let me hold that up, though. It's got a bit of a really dark amber color to it. Yeah, it does show up on camera. But how does it taste?
It's good.
Considering it's 7%, we probably bought this thing at the Wine Monopoly because it's too expensive to...
Yeah, we have to. Either that or some shop is breaking Norwegian law spectacularly.
Yeah, no. Well, no, I meant the other option would be that we might have been gifted it, but I don't think so. På Indre Sunnmøre har...
Yeah, could be. Because Indre Sunnmøre is where the gift people live.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, that could be. Okay, well, where is Indre Sunnmøre for those that don't know? Sunnmøre.
North of Selja.
And Indre means inner.
It's kind of the way the old fylke or counties, you could say, were put together in Norway. That was kind of a weird one because the county is called Møre og Romsdal. But if you look at the provinces, it goes like this. Sunnmøre, Southern Møre, Romsdal, and then Nordmøre, Northern Møre.
Yeah, okay. It says...
the people from Northern Møre are almost Trønders.
Okay, you get to translate this one. This one's in your dialect, actually. Or close,
no, it isn't.
Not your dialect, but it's closer to the west end of Norway than it is to Bokmål. På Indre Sunnmøre har det i generasjoner vært tradisjon å bygge maltøl, kornøl. Trollbryggeriet Innskjer, instead of Ørnsker, og videreføre denne arven ved å brygge øl med karakter, tuftet på håndverksmessige metoder med lokal særpreg. In my horrible dialect. You want to translate that or? No. It's just your basic stuff anyway. It says it's in the Inner Sunnmøre. For generations it's been a tradition to brew maltøl, corn, which is basically corn beer or
malt beer.
Malt beer, yeah. The Troll Brewery wants to continue this art of this inheritance, not inheritance, but this tradition basically that they've inherited by brewing a beer with character tufta på håndmässiga karakter tufta på håndmässiga metoder.
Founded on.
Founded, okay, that's in tufta. That's
Tufta,
yeah.
as in the last name of our former boss. Or,
Yeah, but it's spelled with an A on the end, and yeah. But I haven't heard it as a word.
Foundation.
Ah, okay. Founded
So-
on handcrafted methods with a local touch.
If I find remains of a Viking house, for instance, in my dialect, it would be de har funnet tuftene av vikinghus oppi dalen her.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Oh, okay. That
So
was new.
tufte is foundation. And when something is tufta på, it's founded on. That usually, in this particular context, that's usually bullshit.
Ett undergjerde øl med kobberfarge til raudbrun farger. Ølet har god maltkarakter med preg av karamell og nørter. Well, that's why you might like it. Med en balansert bitterhet og litt humle aroma. It's under yeasted beer, if I said there's undergjerde øl.
Yeah.
With copper color to a red-brown color, the beer has good malt characteristics with a hint of caramel and nuts, and a balanced bitterness and a little bit of hops aroma. Sorry, I'll put your beer over here.
I don't know exactly what that means. Somebody like Jay or somebody
They
who's
would know,
more
yeah.
into
Beers.
the techniques of brewery would know. Because if it is under yeasted, it doesn't really matter how much yeast you put into it, because the yeasting, the fermentation process will keep going until all the yeast dies.
Yeah.
But it might be that you wanted to keep some sweetness, so you kill the yeast on purpose instead of letting it die naturally, because it's either A, gets too strong so they can't survive in the alcohol, or B, they run out of food. But I'm speculating wildly, and somebody who actually knows what they're talking about is probably a lot better to talk about this than I am.
Jay usually catches us after we've sent, so he would probably post something in the comments later. Too, if he's not up and to be on now.
Yeah, no, but you might have more people who are.
Yep.
What should you say? I'm a consumer. I'm not a producer.
Well, they have time to look it up because actually I'm behind on the chat. So when I catch up, by the time I catch up, it will have gotten to that question. So let's see. Rhonda's starting a hat with a Lana Loft herbal garden, a shaded green. Ooh, that'll be really nice. Lana Loft is nice. Nella says complains about the wind. And okay, so Finland is complaining about the wind. We were supposed to have storm, but we didn't get it. Yes, it's the tale of the Eowyn. Your winds are off. Okay, so they didn't get one. Let's see. Lindsay's here as well, working on dragon parts for my significant other's performance suit. Oh, I'm curious about this one now. That would be cool. The dragon parts, anyway. And then Rhonda said, by the way, that her gauge was fine. PJ said, thankfully the clouds are a couple of nights ago. Albert says he plans to spend his birthday at a gappahook with a fire and do some grilling. Do you want to explain what a gappahook is?
It's kind of a lean-to temporary shelter type thing.
Yep, and it's perfectly okay to do at a market or a Viking village market, for example, if you don't have a tent. But yeah, how to explain that one real quick? I don't have a piece of square fabric, but it's you take a tarp. It's just a square, and then you can the way you set up the tarp could be different shapes, but anyway, you can just literally do this with a pole and stick it between two trees, or you can kind of fold a bit so half of it is in the ground and the other half sticks up, for example. It's a quick shelter, and we see a lot of the fighting reenacting people using those at markets.
Torban, I think, I'm not sure if I remember correctly who told me the story, but the Norwegian Broadcasting Company, NRK, it's kind of like the Norwegian version of BBC. It's a government-funded news and entertainment thingy.
Yeah.
They have one thing they actually are kind of good at, and I hate them, so I really don't give them much credit, but they're pretty good at local news. So they have like correspondents all over Norway. And I have an office at Nordfjordeid with one guy working in it. And every time there is extreme weather coming, his bosses in Oslo call him and says, go out to Selje and Stadlandet to look at extreme weather. And he absolutely hates it. First of all, the roads are usually fucked, so he ends up getting stuck in Selje or on Stadlandet.
Yeah.
And secondly, he can't get anything sensible out of the locals because they're so used to it that they don't even react. So he is looking at the boat being smashed into land, and he turns to a local and says, is this the most extreme weather you've ever seen? And I go, no. Men det blåser litt.
It's blowing a little bit.
It's a little bit windy.
That's the whole thing. Like last week we were talking about that. What is the definition of a little bit in Norwegian? It's about the same as Minnesotan. It's a little cold. But I don't know if you guys, it sounds like you might be, are just as proud as we are up in Duluth, Minnesota, where we say the weather is like a rite of flippin' passage, man. We wear that stuff with pride.
Well, to some extent, it's kind of morbid. But people in Selje kind of take some pride in how dangerous the piece of sea right outside is. So
You do, at least, I know.
it's kind of a conflict between two places on the coast of Norway to be the most dangerous piece of coast in Norway. It's Stadhavet, which is right outside of Selje, and it's Hustadvika, that's in Romsdal. And both of them are really dangerous, and you have had a lot of casualties and ships going down in both places. But the thing that makes Hustadvika dangerous is that it is complicated to navigate. So if you have a GPS, you're probably fine. But Stadhavet is more like Neptune don't like you today, so you die.
We had the November gales, the whole Edmund Fitzgerald thing.
Or I should probably say Ægir instead of
Ægir.
Neptune, since I'm a Viking.
Yes, and do you want to explain quickly who Ægir is?
It's the bear brewer on the bottom of the sea who have a tendency to fuck with sailors.
Yep. By the way, things we like to test Karl's knowledge about. If you have any Viking questions, we have decided to raffle this thing off because the non-Viking hat in Nalbinding off because my kids didn't want it and I can't put it in the shop. Vikings did not have kitty cat hats. So we decided that that's just the short version anyway, but we've decided, and then we're going to give it until the end of the month, which means the 31st, and then technically we're back on the 1st. You have to come up with a question that Karl likes the most, and we'll send you the hat. Okay, so anyway, you have some time to add some questions in there while I catch up. Some more on chat. That one's in Oslo stitch, by the way, and some really beautiful yarn that's discontinued with 20% silk in it, called Suka. Sorry. Nikki says, the wobbly glass makes you feel drunk before you take a sip. Do you feel drunk before you took a sip?
The frustrating thing about that glass, if it is actually from the Viking Age, and I believe it probably is, it's the most stable glass I had.
Yeah, probably.
All the other ones are worse.
Meanwhile, this glass isn't wobbling at all. You're all drunk. Okay.
I like it. It looks
I can
like
look it up on their catalog.
the Vikings are kind of trying to combine the concepts
I
of
can find
drinking
it.
and drinking games. So with the Snabelbeaker, the Viking glass, this
Snabelbeaker is the one with the claw beer.
well, Clawbeaker or Snabelbeger, just so
Yeah.
I don't mix up my languages completely.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because usually I'm all for English. I think English is a more nuanced language than Norwegian. You have terms for things we just don't have terms for. But when it comes to description of this particular glass, I'm agreeing with the Norwegians. Because Snabelbeger means trunk, like is in an elephant's trunk, beaker. And clawbeaker means claws in talon beaker. And I would say these things look a lot more like an elephant's trunk than they look like a claw to me.
Oh yeah. Oh, on the other one, yeah.
On the clawbeaker, yes.
Yeah, that one's over by the sink if you want to grab it. By the way, according to Scanglass, which is where we get these from, they are Scandinavian fine from 600 to year 1000.
Yeah. So.
And they also have a version with blue threads on it, blue design on it, and the blue is just literally glass kind of melted on the top of it, on the outside of it. It's not actually worked into it. But yeah, no. So we have these in the shop this year, but not too many. We only get a few at a time because people have a hard time taking glass home. But no, you can get the Globbeaker if you want.
It's weird because back when we had the shop in Flom, glass was our primary seller.
Yep.
So.
But also, you could take a lot more weight back then too.
And also,
back in
Flom
your
is all of your tourists pretty much on cruise ship tourists because there are like 3 or 4 cruise ships at a time in there. And the cruise ship tourist has a little bit more carrying capacity than somebody who travels by plane, for instance.
Let's see. Drea's here as well from Minnesota. Nolvia's here also from Hunting Beach. That glass has sea legs. Laugh out loud. I like that one. Lindsay's trying to come up with a question about the dragons in the Viking times with stupid autocorrect. And Nella, wouldn't a glass beaker have been a status item, and you would want to hold it up to show you have it?
Yeah, that's also true.
Because glass was not cheap those days.
It would be an extreme status symbol in the Viking Age. You can actually produce glass in Norway, but the Vikings didn't know how. So there is no evidence of glass blowing of any kind in Scandinavia, as far as I know, in the Viking Age. So everything is imported from continental Europe, and the Vikings are basically thinking of it as some kind of magic. It is also to some extent that the Vikings' fault that glass blowing skills kind of went down around the start of the Viking Age. Because the towns and emphoria where people are craftsmen are making these things for sale had a tendency to burn down pretty frequently in the Viking Age. Bad fire safety, I guess.
Yeah. Go get your glass by the sink there. I'll show you needle binding real quick. So you have a second.
You can... I have no beer in this glass, so I can show you how the wobbling works with alcohol in it.
Oh, just a minute. Then I have to turn the camera. The microphone thing is falling off. There you go. There, yeah.
I know, I'm getting it to wobble a little bit too
Jesus! Okay, that's
but...
it. You're getting up. No more for you. All right, I will put this... there we go. Down there. Okay, so the needle binding stitch of the week. There's my computer in the background. It'll do. So it would have been better if I had a longer needle to show you, but this will do. The reason I don't usually, a lot of people will use a needle this length.
Smoke break. And it sounds like I should take off my
microphone. Yeah, either that or we mute your microphone. One or the other. There we go.
You can have it.
Okay, we'll put it there. So we don't have to listen to Karl go out and smoke again in the wind like last couple times. Okay, we're just getting used to reusing these these microphones again. But the sound is so much better. And then because...
I just want to mention this before I go.
Yeah?
Liga, our co-worker, is doing Duolingo in Norwegian.
Yep.
And her favorite sentence so far that she had to learn in Norwegian
wait, they can't hear you. Yeah. Liga is learning Duolingo and in Norwegian, and her favorite sentence so far is what?
The microwaves are watching.
The microwaves are watching? Oh my god. Duolingo has some pretty fun ones. Now, because of this pit here, this means we can actually be out in the wind again eventually, and it won't be as bad. So anyway, Telemark is the stitch. So if you're here for the yarn, here comes the yarn. This is the hat that I was working on. This is the right side, technical right side, so you can see it better. And this is the technical wrong side. But you can see there's a lot more braiding to it than there is with Dalby. So this is basically, Telemark is basically Dalby with a plated edge. And when they say a plated edge or a braided edge, they mean that yarn is going over your thumb loop instead of under. So this one, I will grab a new stitch, or a new loop from the previous row. It would have, oh yeah, I was going to say, it's easier with a longer needle to show so my fingers don't get in the way. But a lot of people do prefer their needles to be more this size in length. I have to do a video about needles, though, when I get them all together. So there we go. Anyway, one from the previous row. You could do an F2 join if you wanted to as well. Then you lift. Okay, I have to do it this way. You're working on the last 3 loops on your chain. So loop 1, loop 2, loop 3 is how that's counted. So the first loop goes on your thumb. Loop 2 is here. We're grabbing it from this side of your string. And loop 3 is here. So for this one, you are going to lift loop 2 behind, back, take loop 3 from behind, then grab loop 2, and then go forward under the thumb loop but over the working yarn. So, and it makes a really nice flat fabric. So pick up one from before the previous row, lifting up the second loop, pulling it behind, picking up number 3 from behind, there, then picking up number 2, then going under the thumb loop, but over the working yarn. And that is Telemark. We've been doing this all week, so it might be, but there's also really nice videos on Lock and Tot too. We've been doing this all month, so you might be able to see it better in a previous. And then, of course, there's another way to do it that might be a little bit more user-friendly or beginner-friendly. You can take this second loop and put it on your forefinger. Find your third loop first. So take the second loop, put it on your forefinger. This will change your gauge, though, so if you do this all the time. Picking up a new loop. If I can get it there. Then pick up the third from behind. Then go back and scoop up the second loop. And then go under the thumb loop and over the working yarn. And that's another way of doing it. So that one's Telemark. The difference between Telemark and Dalby, as I was saying, was that Dalby goes like this. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I do so many finished stitches, but I have a tendency to always want to do Dalby. So the last hat I made, I ended up switching to Dalby at some point and didn't even realize it, and I did it for like 5 rows, so I thought, screw it, I'm going to continue with it. And then I ended with a couple rows in Telemark just to make it look like it was intentional. But when you are doing Telemark, you won't figure out the mistake until the next row, because in Telemark, all the stitches slant this way, or like, if I hold my needle that way, they slant this way. But in Dalby, because you're going under the loop, they slant this way. So when you get to the next row, suddenly you have a stitch that goes like this. That's because you suddenly change directions. But if, again, if you mix up your loops, it's around here somewhere. Yeah, it's more obvious on this side. If you mix up your second and third loop, it's good. You're going to get something like that. And I didn't want to go back and pick it up, so like I said, I'll just do a little bit of chain stitch over it, chain stitch embroidery. A little less visible from this side, but you can still see. So anyway, that's the needle binding part. I can show you real quick how the hats turned out, or all the pouches turned out that I put on YouTube or on Facebook. I put them on Blue Sky too, by the way. These are all the recycled ones. The recycled wool. They look like that.
You should put it on X too, so the Republicans can see it.
I put it on Blue Sky, so it's the Democratic X, I guess, apparently. I don't know. I have to turn off all the political posts, because I'm not really there for the posts. I never got into X, and then I thought it was going to disappear, so I just didn't. This one was apparently the clear winner, though. When I looked through, though, this one got the most likes. So I don't know if it's because somebody clicked on it and put a comment on it and that it pops up individually in the feed, but everybody seems to like this one the most. And these are the flat ones. Like that, and they're kind of fun to see how they turn out. So, and I can show you, I will always have one that's kind of half done, because
the eye on the screen is longer than it usually.
Yeah, no, it might be a link thing. So I have this as all my scraps or little things that I'm ditching, but this one is in pouch strings. But this one is as far as I got on the last one I made. So eventually I'll pick up, it's like really contrasty because of the light, there we go. So eventually I'll pick up, this one is just a chain, and then you work the chain back on itself and just keep going around and around. But you can make them just a tube and then just whip stitch the bottom together. It'll work just as fine. But we've decided we're going to line these. We've decided, which means I asked Karl, because I like the idea of people using these as dice bags. It seems so handy, and people that do role-playing games with dice really take pride in their dice bags, I noticed. So, but in order for it to be a good dice bag, because it will stretch lengthwise over time, you would want to line the bag. So I'll put some fabric on the inside to keep it from stretching too long. We had, I don't know, about 1.5 years ago or so, we showed the ball sack dice bag. I think that's in Cellular right now, either that or it's up there on the red basket. because it just started getting longer and longer and longer, and then of course it was a round one. So as it gets longer and longer and longer, it starts to look a little bit more inappropriate for people with eggplant brains. Charlotta.
I think it's probably in Celia.
Yeah, I know we had it in Celia. We brought it out for Christmas one year, but I didn't know if we brought it back. So that was one thing. And then a little sneak peek at next week's stitch, or next month's stitch. It doesn't have a name. I put it in the advanced group to find out what it's called. This is my round start one. I've got some issues. I've not tried this before. I never saw this before. So I started doing it again, and it looks like that. It's almost like a Coptic. It worked in the way of Coptic, the way you're taking the loops. But it's also almost like Danish. So, and then, I don't know, we don't have a name for it, but I came across this one by accident. I just happened to get a suggested, for my, on YouTube suggested that I look at this video, and it was a new nalbinding tutorial, how to nalbind. And I'm watching this, and she doesn't label the stitch at all. She just says, this is nalbinding, this is how I nalbind. And that was how actually the first time I ever learned nalbinding, I got confused because I didn't realize there was more than one stitch. But there's as many stitches as there are ways to tie a knot, basically. So limitless, pretty much. But what she was doing was something I'd never seen before, but it is nalbinding, but the way she did it anyway. So we'll learn this stitch, and we're going to have to call it the mystery stitch, or maybe I'll link her name in there. It's like 2 years ago she posted it, but it is really easy to mix up. So this one also will get a bit of, you can see right there the stitches look slightly different. So this will also have some embroidery on top. This is actually two different dye lots of the same blue, so you can see a color shift in there. I'm intentionally using every other skein to make it look like it was intended. Yeah, there's like a little mess up there too. So I have not mastered this one yet. There you go. See, it starts going vertical. But I have no idea what this stitch is called. Nella's, I know, seen the post anyway too. Oh, there's some different conversation going on there in chat, so I'll go catch up about that. But anyway, well, yeah, we'll just have to figure out what to call this thing. But it's actually quite simple to do anyway, but it is actually quite simple to mess up, and you won't realize it until you went back a row. But it is fairly easy to unpick. I just can't be asked. I used crappy yarn intentionally, so just to try it. But I didn't like the round start. I thought it was looking kind of wonky, and it's like trying to do a round start in Coptic stitch. It's a little bit tricky. This is the back side, by the way. So the idea that if I just did it like this way, it might be easier to decrease than it is to increase. So wrong side, right side, mystery stitch. We'll play with this in February. Okay. Then I will put the camera back on Karl, and I'll flip through chat and see if we got you some questions. I can get you started with a couple, though. And by the way, Pruda had Hector looking up the beer thing about the yeast. Here's your microphone again. Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna zip through chat real quick. We should definitely look into chat though, because I gotta say I'm really impressed with you guys in chat. It's so awesome. It's just like we have like only 25 people online at a time or something like that. Maybe it's more now anyway, but the chat just flies and I love it. It's fun to look back. I read all of them back last week too, and so try to take notes of anything that was missed. Rhonda says, hello gang, it's Robbie Burns Day, so I'm wearing a Scottish bonnet. Oh, I have to look up Robbie Burns Day. But Robert will be proud of you. Let's see. Got up a little bit further than that. Laugh at my... What did PJ say? What is the reason for a glass that can't stand straight? And did we cover that, sort of? This was a little bit ago.
I think that is something the Vikings do on purpose. Because it's true for the drinking horns. It's true for the so-called Viking glasses. The Viking glasses are not made in Scandinavia, but they are found almost exclusively in Scandinavia. And they are like this shape. So imagine a wine glass with no flat part on the bottom to put it down. I think it has to do with Vikings' kind of aggressive drinking culture, where if somebody gives you a drink, you're not supposed to put it down. You're supposed to drink it and then put the glass down, upside down, flat on the table.
Yeah.
But this is pure speculation on my part. But it makes sense from my mental schema of how the Vikings kind of worked as a society. And this basing part of this on the Håvamål, the poem. because so much of it is don't get drunk and do stupid things. Which leads some people to the conclusion that the Vikings were really sober and polite people. But I wouldn't think that if they already were really sober and polite people, your most important poem is mostly focusing on being exactly that. I think what you could call probably an aggressive drinking culture was an actual problem in their society, and the Hovamol is kind of like an answer to it.
Yeah.
Basically, they're going, Odin doesn't want you to drink that much. Your decisions are bad. Stop it.
Okay, I have to. Actually, there's okay. So if you're from where Robert comes from, or in Scotland, or you're over in the United States, obviously people pronounce caramel differently. And PJ picked up on this because PJ's in UK. I heard a hint of carnal nuts in that about the drink. Because I say caramel, not caramel.
Caramel.
I heard a hint of carnal nuts in the drink, and then Robin says, "Laugh out my loud, laugh out my ass off." Carnal nuts. I nearly spat my drink across the keyboard. So did I. I don't know if you saw it just a minute ago. Anyway, in American it's the American pronunciation of caramel. It just sounds a bit like carnal. It's actually not even just American. It's the north versus south, east, west, because we also have, I think the southerners say caramel. But yeah, in the north we say caramel. Anyway, that was funny. How are your carnal nuts, by the way?
When you write it caramel.
Caramel. Yeah, but we also write aluminum, or it's supposed to be aluminium.
That's just because you guys are dyslexic.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's see. As Nella says in Finland, there's no bad weather, just poor clothing. That's the same thing they say in Norwegian. Det finns ingen dårlig vær, bara dårlig kläder. No bad. There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And I think we say that in Minnesota too. I think everybody in the north say that just to convince people in the south that.
The thing is that this is kind of true, but it's also true that even if you are from a kind of weathery area, I'm from a very windy area. So I know how to dress for wind. So when the temperature is like 0 degrees and you have a bloody hurricane, it feels like -20. But when I started go to school in Sogndal, there is no wind in Sogndal. In Sogndal Centrum, I think I was there for like 9 years. And I think there was maybe one day when if somebody called me from Selja and asked what's the weather like down there, I would say it's windy.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when I dress for the bad weather in Selja, I dress wind tight, so that the wind doesn't blow into my clothes.
Yeah.
Because when in Selja, bad weather is about 0 degrees, but it feels like -20 because the wind is moving at an enormous speed. And I tried doing the same thing in Sogndal, but when it feels like -20 in Sogndal, it's because it is bloody -20 in Sogndal. And I can be as wind tight as I damn well please, I will still freeze my balls off.
In Duluth, wind chill is a thing, so we like Gore-Tex. If you block the wind, you've solved half your problem.
In Duluth, it's unseasonably warm.
It was unseasonably warm in October in Duluth this year. I took his beer glass away because Nikki was asking. Yeah, we do have these in the shop, but they're expensive. Shipping is expensive as hell right now, but it's possible to order these in our gift shop. But I have to upload them, so just let me know. You can find that information in the description. Let's see, the YouTube description, not the Facebook ones. Okay, then you have to get under questions.
I think they call them tumble beakers, if you want to try to Google it.
This one, I forgot what it's called. I closed the window already, but yeah. Anyway, but we have to get under questions, and we'll probably run over time because this is the last one for questions. So, but anyway,
this is
and you were not
pretty good and strong. So
no, I think that one looked really
good.
I
will enthusiastically answer your questions.
Well, and they're going to get even more interesting now as that bottle gets closer to the bottom, because Karl doesn't believe in sipping anything. Okay, so I see Prude is collecting some questions for me too, which is awesome, and I do have a couple from here. So the ones that were from written on Facebook in comment. There was, let's see, Viking question. This was Roger. Any history of North Pole, Arctic Circle, polar crossing from Norway to Russia or Mongolia or anything something similar?
In the Viking,
did they cross over ice to get to a...
In the Viking Age, no.
No.
The Vikings went into the White Sea. That's basically the piece of sea that is on the other side of the Kola Peninsula. So in the area around Murmansk in Russia. The Vikings were hunting and fishing in that area, and also probably bothering the locals to no end. But the Viking Age was in a warm period, so it was probably warmer in the Viking Age than it is right now. So I don't see that I would have a need for it. Uh, what exactly was the question again?
Was there any history of North Pole crossing or something like that?
Yeah, I don't think they tried to do that. The Vikings' cosmology, at least, well, it's not really Viking, it's earlier, it's later, but the Vikings probably had about the same view of things.
Yeah.
Is that the further north you go, it goes colder and colder until it's completely unlivable. And the further south you go, it gets hotter and hotter until it's completely unlivable. So the Vikings, when they're starting to get really bothered by hot or cold, they probably stop and turn around. But it's not certain. They might have experimented with it, but I don't see how they would be able to pull it off if they decided to try.
Then there was another one from Kira in the book River Kings, which is one that you've actually recommended.
Yeah.
I forget who writes that one, but that one's pretty good. It's about
Katja Arman.
okay, yeah, and it pretty much covers bone analysis, I think.
Well, it covers a lot of things, but
yeah, but we don't have to go too deep in it anyway. But in that book, there's something about how some bones have been analyzed, and they have realized that the deceased may have eaten a lot of seafood because it affects the carbon dating. She wrote that in the chat last week, and it wasn't necessarily a question, but I kind of like it as a question. Sorry, I can say that again. They realized that the deceased must have eaten a lot of seafood because it affects the carbon dating.
Radiological dating, that is using the half-life of the different types of isotopes to determine how long ago it is something stopped. In the case of carbon dating, breeding, but in the case of other things, maybe eating or something like that. You have several isotopes that can help you to determine how long ago something basically stopped getting more of that isotope. I'm not sure,
Can't use this needle, it's too small.
I have a good understanding of physics, but I'm not an expert. This is basically nuclear physics. When you have a radioactive isotope like carbon-14, you have the core of the atom is unstable, so it will occasionally break down. And that breakdown is predictable. So I think the half-life for carbon-14, and don't arrest me on this because I didn't bother to Google it, is something like 4,500 years. And you get carbon-14 by breathing in carbon dioxide, I believe. So as soon as you die, you stop getting more of it. And we can assume exactly how much you had in you when you died. And if we find your bones, we can analyze how much is left. And with the half-life with the known half-life, you can target pretty exactly how long ago something or someone died or stopped breathing, so to speak.
Sorry, just digging for needles.
Theoretically, if you eat a lot of seafood, and seafood, I think it's probably another isotope, but I can theoretically see how eating a lot of seafood will mess with the results of a carbon-14 test. But
No needles.
This is something that will take me a lot of research to actually get a clear answer to. And you have people that are actual experts in this field that can explain it in like a heartbeat. But it's a very good question, if it's a question. At least it's something I don't normally talk about.
By the way, quick needle thing. I hate these. I absolutely hate these flipping plastic needles, but you can use them, and there are some people that prefer them. The thing I was talking about, length of the needle, and I'll get more into it, is I'm having a hard time using this one because I've got carpal tunnel syndrome in both wrists. I mean, I've basically chronic tendonitis in both wrists, elbows, and shoulders. It goes way back to the days when I kayaked way too much. But I have a hard time gripping this needle. It's too tight, so I need something longer. But anyway, that's why I was digging for a needle suddenly.
Since this is needle binding, I should probably shut up, but
No, it was just a question.
isn't these needles way too pointy for needle binding?
If it's too pointy, it can tend to split your wool a bit, but it'll do in a pinch.
Yeah.
Well, that other one is, this is
Because
buffalo horn. This is
that's
fine.
the thing I keep hearing about needle binding needles, is that they should never be too pointy because
No,
then you
because you
split
can
your wool.
split your yarn. But if you want to, there's other stitches that are actually, there are some stitches called half, where you intentionally split your
And
wool.
this very
then
much
it's
look
perfect.
like something that would split wool.
Yes, it would. But it's actually, it's for like a mesh cross stitch type thing. Okay, anyway, so we have to keep going because you've got lots of questions. There's more in the chat too. And then the other one, this is another one from Facebook. Nikki said, what was the communication system used for communicating over long distances? I can't read my writing. Did somebody ride, or did did they ride a deer, or no? Anyway, that was just a joke. But anyway, did somebody ride out to deliver messages? That was what was the communication tools used? Paper, leather, clay, homing pigeons. Did they have road transportation in place, or did they have to hack away through the forests, or where did they to get what they needed? Anyway, the communication system is what this one boils down to.
The short answer is we don't know. But I can speculate. And in Viking society, most people are not literate. So the communication system is not written, it's verbal. We know from later Norwegian history that we had a system called budstikke. Basically, if Norway goes to war, before the advent of the radio and the telegraph and all of these ways of quick communication that we have nowadays, they would use the system of the budstikke. The budstikke is, it basically means the messenger stick. And it's basically a spike with a little cylinder attached to the back of it. Inside the cylinder there is a written message. The Vikings would do, I think, would do the same thing, but they would do it verbally. What happens is, if Norway goes to war, a farmer somewhere wakes up one morning by hearing somebody smashing something into his door. Then he runs outside and finds that, oh, I have the budstikke stuck to my door. I have to read the message. And the message says something like, get all of your equipment and show up at this place, and also tell Audun, next farmer over. So he immediately puts the message back in the thing and adds the next farmer, and then he runs over to Audun's house and goes smack into his wall. And then he runs back to his own house and gets his equipment and shows up. So you kind of have a relay race type system. The Vikings are usually the aggressor, they're not the defender. So it's pretty easy if you and your friends are getting drunk one day to plan an attack on Ireland and say, okay, how about you boys show up here at about the full moon, and then we can just load the ship and go to Ireland. Eh? But if you are reacting to an attack, it's something different, and the information has to be moved quickly. And I think they would have a system like that, where the message, the king tells his some of his interested men, they run to the local farmers go, okay, I'll tell my friend, and then they go and run to the next farm over, come back and get ready. There is a funny story here, and it's one of my favorite Vikings, Håkon the Good. Because he kind of ended up in a fight with Denmark, because his brother, Erik Bloodaxe, voluntarily abdicated as a king, but his sons don't agree with this decision, and they really don't want to leave Håkon the Good in charge of Norway. So the sons of Erik Bloodaxe and Gunhild Kongemor, Gunhild the Mother of Kings, so you kind of know how this is going to end. They are still fighting Håkon like a lot. And the Danish are always looking for a way to destabilize the Norwegian monarchy. So they obviously give them money and people. So they keep attacking Norway, and Håkon comes up with the idea of the Varde system. The Varde system is basically a big fire ready to be lit on the top of every mountain. So that if you see the attack coming, you can light the Varde on the top of the mountain, and then the other people see the mountain is the flames from the top of the mountain, and people many, many miles away will see that, and then they will light their own, and then you kind of have an alarm system that covers the entire coast.
And they still exist today.
The idea is good. The problem is that the implementation was horrible. So sometimes you might have like 3 Viking ships that are caught in a storm and then end up coincidentally showing up somewhere at Sunnmøre. And the locals panic and light their Varde, which leads to every other one along the entire coast of Norway gets lit, and the entire fleet is mobilized to deal with 3 Viking ships that probably are just fishermen that misnavigated. So Håkon gets really tired of this. So he says, okay, he's Håkon good, so he's generally a nice guy, but this one is a little bit draconic on his part. If there are any more false alarms, whoever is responsible will be executed. Which leads to a kind of comical event where he and his closest staff are having a meeting inside of a house. His army is outside of the house, and I can visibly see with their eyes the Danish fleet is coming in. And they're basically going, okay, somebody should probably tell the king. And I'm not going to do that because the king executes people if it's a mistake. And for all I know, this might be a couple of 100 trading ships. So in the end, it's just one guy who gets brave enough to walk into the house and go to the king and says, I think you should probably go outside. I really think you should probably go outside. So the king comes out, sees the Danish army and mobilizes and, well, obviously beats them. The Danish after all.
I was going to say, though, but that system still exists today, or traces of it anyway. So a lot of times, for example, in Drøbak, there's 3 really big mounds, and they wonder if they're graves, or they could be like a potato cellar, or not a potato cellar, but a food storage. But in at least case of one of them, it's actually the Varda thing, as you're talking about. It was meant that they would have, like, most likely, that you could light a fire on top of that, because from that one, you can also see one that's in Vestby, which is not so obviously a mound, but if it's lit, you will see the fire from the other one. And you can see one from Vestby into Hvitsten, and Hvitsten is on the coast. So you could actually see the fire go from Hvitsten, Vestby could see it, Vestby could light a fire, Drøbak could see it, Drøbak could light a fire, and Ås could see it. You could actually, one of the easiest ways is Vestby now has a water tower with a big logo for Outlet One, or whatever the hell they call that mall now anyway. But you can see that tower from the mound in Drøbak anyway, if you're up on top of it, and so you can kind of see how the system would work. So a lot of times they think they're Viking graves, but they're actually...
The system is good. It just doesn't really take into account human nature.
Yeah.
So imagine that you are responsible for one of these things, and you have a village with maybe 50 people living in it, and then you have farms around it, which is another maybe 500 people.
Yeah.
And you see 4 Viking ships coming in. You know that you don't stand a chance. You guys are farmers, these people are warriors, and they are coming to do really bad things to your local community. But you also know that if you light the bloody Varde, then the king will be angry because this isn't a real invasion, it's just a raid. It would be extremely tempting to light the thing. And that causes it to be lit almost all the time, which causes the alarms to usually be fake. And also, you can only transport one message this way, and that is, the shit has hit the fan.
There was actually, sorry, am I cutting you off?
And you don't even know where the message is coming from. Because if the king is sitting in Trondheim and he sees these fires are coming from the south, he knows, okay, somebody lit a fire somewhere in the south of Norway. And that's all he knows. And since they're on top of the mountains, it might also be a lightning strike. So he doesn't have the information he needs to kind of act on it. But obviously, as soon as you see it, you have no other choice than to mobilize everything you have.
I was going to say that there's also, wasn't there some movie or some plot anyway, where they actually used the tactic against him, where that was actually, they lit one of them, or the enemy came and lit one of them intentionally to pull people from away from another place that they were going.
That might also hypothetically work.
Yep.
So it's another weakness in
I
the
thought it was a
system.
brilliant plan. Anyway, but it's a flaw in the system.
Back in, I don't know exactly when it was. It's in Germany, I believe. No, I'm very, very out of my area.
Yeah, we're definitely going over time, by the way.
But I tried an idea, and this one is good. The problem is that it is just right before they invent the telegraph anyway, and the telegraph is better at this. But somebody had semaphore towers, where you have two flags. So you can make a lot of different symbols with two flags, which makes it so that you can basically communicate detailed messages by visual flag waving, so to speak. I believe it was in Germany, and I believe it was in the 17 or 1800s, but it might have been the Netherlands or somewhere there. This is outside of my, it's outside of my playpen, so to speak, so I don't know for sure, but somebody did something like that.
By the way, Karl's credentials, he's a guide at Viking Valley, Gudvangen, he's a Viking guide. Anyway, okay, there's a lot of fun chat going on too, and you should definitely go back and read it. It'll be available for everybody else within 24 hours of posting. When this has been out for 24 hours, then you can read the chat. But I have to skip over and go straight to the questions.
Did somebody ask about my credentials?
No, I just thought we actually never said
because
that.
I was just
He's
worried.
just some drunk guy that looks like a Viking I picked up off the street.
And
no, I just thought of that.
I was
We
just
never actually
wondering
said
if
that.
somebody wants to use me as a primary source, please don't.
No. But you have an uncanny knowledge of remembering everything you read, and then of course you're not satisfied with an answer until you've gone down that rabbit hole.
And I also am skeptical of all new information I receive. I have to double check
everything
it.
has to be taken with a grain
But
of
salt. I am generally right when I'm talking about the Viking Age or the Roman Empire.
No, you are.
If I'm talking about anything else, I'm probably right.
And rule number 1, if we're not sure, we're not sure. And we'll tell you, never sit there and claim when you don't know.
Yeah, and you have to point out when you are speculating.
Yeah. Okay, we have to move on though, Karl, because it's already after time. Okay, Drea writes, what are some Viking dice games and rules? This one we actually get quite a bit.
Yeah. But again,
because we know they found dice in the Viking Age.
We fall back on the classical one, we don't know. We are probably right, at least in the big picture, when it comes to the rules for games like Nefa, Tafel, and Kub. But
Kub is K-U-B-B.
Dice games, the ones we know from today, some of them are extremely complicated. And it is very possible that the Vikings had complicated games, and it could also have been dirt simple. It's
they didn't seem to write things down too much.
No, they're very bad at that. But if you want to just use dice for gambling, then it doesn't have to be more complicated than, hey, I bet I can roll a higher score than you can. I have 3 dice, you have 3 dice, let's go for it. But it might have been Yahtzee-like, it might have been craps-like, it might have been whatever. We just don't know. We just find a lot of dice.
Okay, so no historical evidence whatsoever, but this is what we like to play. My kids and I in the Viking Village. It's super simple, but absolutely, it's actually based on, I think, a modern drinking game. Nothing to do with the Viking Age, but it's easy to play, and you can get more people. So what we have is 2 dice, and you have a group of people. You're going to need at least 4, I suppose. And the 2 opposite each other each get 1 die. And they have to roll the dice as many times as they need and as fast as they want until they roll a 6. When they roll a 6, they pass the dice to the right. And you do this, but if you end up with 2 dice, you're out, and then the group gets smaller. So there's obviously beer drinking games with this where they burn the cork and hit you on the head anyway. But that is a really easy game for my kids to understand. It actually is insane. Well, my kids are almost 16 now; they can get it. But when they were 5, they thought this was easy. But it actually does get a lot of people together and looks a lot of fun. And to somebody who's just walking through the village, they just see some kids playing with a die and they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing, but anyway, so we'd like to do that one, but there's absolutely no history base of that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's
No,
one that we'd
but
like to play in the village.
games for the purpose of gambling, and games for the purpose of skill, and games for we know they did it. We just don't know exactly how they did it.
Yeah. So okay, and then again, yeah, like I said, they don't. They have a tendency to not write down things, which is really makes it harder for us. Let's see. Prudo's been grabbing some questions and putting them aside for me, which is flipping awesome. So that was Drea that asked that question. Nikki wanted to know about a Viking god of the winds. Is there a Viking god of the winds? God of wind.
Njord has some weather responsibility.
Yeah. Njord is actually the god of sea, or
No, Njord is complicated,
sea travel.
but
Yeah, okay.
sea travel, trade,
Yeah.
good luck, weather,
Oh, okay.
prosperity.
Do you have another one that would might fit?
I would say that if I was a Viking and I was concerned about the wind, if I was on land, I would talk to Njord, and if I was in the open seas, I would talk to Ægir. But I don't
Isn't
know.
that the god of beer?
Well, actually,
God damn it, help me out!
Ægir has something to do with beer brewing because he is the main character in the story that has a lot to do with the beer brewing. But probably all of the gods brew their own beer. The thing with Ægir is that Tyr and Thor go to visit him because he has the only cauldron big enough to brew all the beer they want for a big party in Asgard. So he's the big cauldron guy.
You gotta read the chat. Sorry. Viking wind is another word for, is the same as the god of garlic and beans. I'm sorry. It's Roger. The chat is pretty fun. I see some have to go, but anyway, everyone's saying, and I was surprised how many hung on for 2 hours last time. Okay, next one. Garcia wants to know if Telemark is good for socks. I like it. You can. It basically makes things. You can see how flat it is. It's almost like a fabric. But if you look at this one, say compared to this one, this is much thicker. You've got this is also a thicker yarn, but still, this is much more denser and or much more loose, bumpier. You can see holes will come through more easily. But this one it's overlapped so many times that yeah. So I like Telemark for socks. It's good. It's also really good if you're ever going to make mittens. You will actually find Telemark mittens and Dalby stitch mittens that they made for the traditional Norwegian costumes, or the Swedish ones as well, bunads. And they would even have I think one set for a funeral and one set for everyday use, but they're nice and thin and they use those stitches quite a bit. Not Viking related though, but those mittens come into play much after Viking. But anyway, they choose those stitches intentionally because they're easy to embroider on as well. Okay, next question was Amanda asks for Karl. Do you think the romanticism of Vikings aids interest in the era or makes it difficult to get unbiased archaeological information out to the public? And there's an also.
I think both extremes. And this is one of my favorite pet peeves. Both extremes are very, very annoying. Yes, they probably generate interest, but they generate interest from people that has to be corrected like a lot. You have the two extremes, as I see it, is the Vikings are super warriors that never lose a fight. They are not afraid of anything. They will
file down their teeth and
they are just super good. They are extremely cruel and they will absolutely murder the living shit out of you and your entire family. And the other one is, oh, Viking society was super progressive and women had equal rights with men and the slaves were treated nicely and it was just a jolly good time all around and they didn't have medicine but they don't really need it. And it's... Both of these annoy me so much because people are people. And the Vikings, by modern standards, are clearly dicks. It's just that so was everybody else at the time. The Vikings were just better at it than many of the other ones. it's not that Viking society, as it was in the Viking Age, would be extremely shocking to a modern person. Compared to us, their threshold of violence is nothing. They will kill you for almost anything. You wouldn't even think of it as an insult.
Like a holmgang?
You might just be, okay, this is the most practical solution right now, so I'm going to do that. And then somebody smacks you in the head with an axe. The best example I can give, and he was probably a little bit extreme even for the Viking Age, but Egil Skallagrimson once kills a man for giving him sour milk when other people in the same house are drinking beer. That's the level of insult that kind of justifies homicidal response, at least from a very, very unstable Viking. But nobody says he was wrong. The guy shouldn't be treating his guests differently. That is wrong in Viking society. But killing the guy for it is a little bit extreme. But it's kind of, I don't know, accepted. These people are, by our standards, extremely brutal. But it's also because they kind of have to be. Imagine that you are a goat farmer in Gudvangen in the Viking Age. There is no police, no prosecutor, nobody is looking out for your interests except for you. So if somebody steals your goats, either you beat them up and drag them to the thing, and then you take off your police cap and put on your prosecutor cap and make a good case of why this guy should not be stealing your goats, and then the thing will make a decision. Either you do that, or it's free goats for everybody. Basically, there is no system in place to protect your interests except for your own skills with weapon and your willingness to use them. Which basically makes a society where everybody is a bloody maniac by modern standards. You also have the concept of need. Need means, well, it's insult, but it's a little bit more than that. It's an insult that kind of sticks. So there are some things that people just cannot say to you and get away with it. So if this is, I'm putting it a little bit on the edge here, but I'm not far off. If I live in Viking society and some man comes up to me and says, "Hey, Karl, you're a woman." If I do not kill him, and pretty damn quickly, everybody will just go, "Yeah, okay, Karl is a woman."
So that leads into the next question. By the way, I like that our local Scottish guy here, Robert, says, at one of my lectures at the uni, they used the term, oops, just a second. At uni, used the term, in the time of the brutes, the Vikings were just better brutes.
Okay. Yes, perfect way to look at it.
Okay, and then Norway wants to know if Karl braids his hair or beard when it's windy.
No.
This is why, by the way.
No.
Let's
No.
see. No.
Don't. We've been down this road before many times. Don't.
He looks like Mr. Miyagi and Steven Seagal had a baby. No.
We don't do this.
That's why we don't.
The only circumstances where my hair gets braided or my beard gets braided is either if she does it, or if it's a really drunken girl and I have no other choice than to let her do it, or either that or physically wrestle with her to get her away.
I'm surprised I didn't die on YouTube just now either, by the way, so that was funny.
I don't like it, and I look like, well, as she said, the love child of Steven Seagal and Mr. Miyagi.
Let's see. Also, there was an also part of the last question. Also, since the popularity shows like Vikings and the Last Kingdom, do you see more tourists believing that they know a lot about the era, but are really based on popular media?
Yes, I do.
We get so many Vikings TV series related questions, but the Last Kingdom was your recommendation.
It's better than Vikings.
Of the two, that one's more accurate. You were saying.
It is.
Of the two.
Read the books.
Yeah.
I still have issues with the books, but the books are a lot better than the series.
Yeah.
Um,
What are the most common questions you get? Well, obviously, assuming Ragnar, Lodbrok, and Lagertha, they all ask about those two.
no, I haven't had a single question about Lagertha.
No, I
as
get
far as I
Lagertha all
know.
the time because of the braiding.
Yeah, because you're a
Yeah.
woman. People ask about what I see.
Did Vikings really have their hair braided up in mohawks like Lagertha?
It's
Probably not.
the questions I get that are clearly Vikings TV series inspired is where is Kattegat?
Yeah, that's always good.
Um,
And Kattegat is actually in the first season of Vikings TV series. You'll see that Kattegat looks like Gudvangen.
And I have a
That's not by
story. I don't
coincidence.
always tell it. It depends on my. It depends on the tour. But sometimes when I do the guided tour, I tell the story of Rollo.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I sometimes get a comment. Rollo was Ragnar's brother, right? And I go, I can't say for absolutely sure that he wasn't, but it would be extremely odd if he was.
Because
Because they are about 70 years apart, historically speaking.
Yeah.
Rollo is almost certainly Norwegian, and Ragnar is almost certainly Swedish or Danish.
Yep. And
There is also the Vikings absolutely love family and their
extended family.
their extended family and also their ancestors. So the Vikings have pretty good control on this. So if there was even a whisper that these two people were even a little bit related, it would be all over the primary and secondary sources. There isn't.
Yeah.
So
And
I would say, as far as I can say anything for absolutely bloody sure, these people were not related. But I can't grab their bloody bones and DNA test them, so I can't say it with 100% certainty. But nothing would surprise me more than that it turns out that Ragnar and Rollo were brothers and blah, blah, blah. And this is another little bit of a pet peeve I have. Movies and TV series do not understand the concept of friendship. So two people who doesn't agree about every bloody little thing can still sit down and drink a beer together. They don't have to be brothers. So the reason I want them to be brothers, same with Thor and Loki in so many. It's mythology, so it doesn't really matter. It's not true anyway, most likely. And if I am wrong, I will be punished in Valhalla for saying that. But if Loki is anything to Thor, according to the Eddas, he would be his step uncle, because he is a blood brother of Odin, and Odin is Thor's father. So there is no way that he would be considered to be a brother of Thor. But because you want these two very different goofballs to sit down and talk, you make them brothers, so they kind of have to. I have friends I have practically nothing in common with, but they are fun people to hang around with and share a beer with. I don't have to agree with them about everything. This kind of leads back to the duck hunting story from last episode.
Okay.
I don't have to agree with the
Long-winded
duck
boy.
hunter about everything.
Would you like to tell him where Kattegat is?
Kattegat is a piece of sea between Denmark and Sweden.
There's no land in Kattegat. Yeah.
And certainly not tall mountains.
No. The reason why, in the first season, the reason why it looks like Gudvangen is because they actually filmed it in Gudvangen, but then eventually it starts looking like Northern Ireland. But no, there is no land in Kattegat.
They didn't film anything. They didn't actually film anything in Gudvangen. They only used
We
background.
actually get that we get that question quite a bit.
They only used background footage because Norway is.
No, we're B footage in season 1.
Norway is dickish to deal with when it comes to basically everything.
It's also flipping expensive to film
and,
here.
yes, but it wouldn't have to be, because they have a system where normally what they do is that if somebody wants to film here and the Norwegian government likes it, they say, okay, it's tax-free, just send us the receipts and we'll pay you back all the tax you've paid for every wear and service you used while you were in Norway. But for some reason, when the Vikings TV series asked the Norwegian government about this, the Norwegian government said, no,
Maybe.
pound sand. So they ended up filming it on Ireland instead, even though they wanted to film it here.
Yeah.
But the Norwegian government is odd and sometimes a little bit arbitrary. But I can't say that I disagree with them on this decision, but I don't think they read the bloody script before they made the decision.
Max was asking if there's nalbinding in Greenland. And this one I actually referred over to Nella because Nella knows 10 times more about the history of needle binding than I do. I'm better at the practicality. Another thing I would point out is if you go to nalbound.com, you'll get to Ann Decker's page, and I believe she has somewhere linked in there, I don't know where, somewhere she has linked a map, and I think it's an interactive map, or she's been working on it, where you can see little dots where there's representative of a nalbinding find somewhere, and then you can click on that, and it'll take you further. It's a work in progress, but if you can find that anyway, that is a real helpful thing. I've actually used that one myself. So anyway, ask Nella, and Nella might be writing this in the chat as well, but she said she answered it a few weeks ago with no, at least from an archaeological point of view. Okay. But you never know. Things are coming out of the permafrost. But so as far as we know, then no finds of needle binding in Greenland just yet. But Greenland, how long has that been inhabited?
Probably for a very long time.
Yeah. And a lot of the Viking, or a lot of the needle binding that is the really old stuff is way, it predates Viking big time.
The Inuit doesn't come to Greenland until the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So the Vikings are actually there before the Inuit. But there is another group of Native Americans who come to that area in the Viking Age. So they would be there contemporary with Leif Eriksson's settlements, or maybe just a little bit after the settlements were settled. It's a little bit unclear, because neither the Vikings or the Native Americans are particularly good at writing shit down.
Lindsay points out a good thing too, actually, because when you go long-winded on beer, like you are kind of today, and yes, last week anyway, she goes, "Ooh, we need more stories from Greg." Yes, we do, but Greg has a tendency to leave early in the winter, because we're only open until 2:00, so we have the option of either working later or just calling it a day earlier. And he tends to go back earlier. I don't know if it's weather related or what. So by the time we come around to do YouTube, he's gone for the day. But we hope to. He keeps saying he will, so hopefully we will. We'll have to find something to tempt him with, to do a storytelling. Otherwise, you're just going to have to deal with long-winded Karl stories. Where are you going with your microphone? Okay, is this more needle binding? Okay, I will show needle binding for a minute while he takes a 5-second break, and then you got a couple more questions to ask, or to answer. Okay, I can show you the thrumming I showed last week. This one I hope to do, let's see. This one I hope to show, I'll put a little video out at some point. So eye candy while he's there. So these are thrummed. Thrumming does not come from the Viking Age, by the way. Thrumming is much more modern. It's Newfoundland, I want to say, that has thrumming, and then it kind of went from there. But this yarn is actually this color. There is some speckles in it, but there are none of these big pink and light gray speckles like those big ones. So this is actually created by putting in the thrums. And then before, I was actually just taking, a thrum is just basically a little piece of cotton, I mean not cotton, sorry, a piece of wool fuzz. It can also be old strips of yarn. You can just feed in there. You could do your little yarn scraps in there as well. I used a wool lopi, and you can brush them out. At first I started brushing out, but then I found that it's actually time consuming to sit there and put each, if you look really close, this pink one, for example, you can see it's just a piece of wool that goes in and out. But to actually add every individual piece of wool was getting to be a pain in the ass. So I tried a different concept, which is one that I do with knitting or crochet, and that was to loop it through. So this is actually one yarn going through, and I will make a little video for that sometime within the next 2 weeks. Now that I found out that last one is much easier to do with the iPhone, the new iPhone, than it was with the old one. And then when I get those there, I cut the loops. Let's see. These I just cut them. And then you can brush them out. I would not use the hand carders on this though because they're too violent. But this is what I was trying to find last week. Just a cat brush will do. You can literally just, wherever I cut here, just brush them. But you don't want to pull, you want to just brush straight down so that they don't come out. You will get some degree of fuzz out with it, but you can save that and use it to make yarn with. There, you can see a bit better. And you don't want to, brush it so hard too that you ruin your needle binding underneath, but there. But anyway, as long as you pull it straight down, then the thumbs won't be pulling out. But if you wiggle it around too much, then you might pull the whole thumb out. So these ones, okay, anyway, Karl's back, but that was your little null binding timeout. But they have to be really, really, really big. This is way too big. This is actually a wrist warmer because I didn't have enough wool, but they have to be way too big because you've got to get your hand in with all that thickness. So otherwise they'll be way too tight. Okay, Karl's back. We can do more questions here in Viking overtime. There it is. I hit the button when I moved it over. Okay, yeah, we were talking about the leather corset thing, and he was talking about erotic Vikings or actual Vikings. But actually, you could take that one. So, no, it's ridiculously stupid. But we could actually take that one step further and go into the lamellar discussion and leather.
I might be wrong about this, but again, it's outside of my playground. But the corset as a concept comes with the beauty standards of the 1700s. So it wouldn't be something they needed. So I don't see them using it. And leather as armor is...
That one comes up quite a bit.
You can use leather as armor. It is possible. It's just not what you see in the movies. Because if you want leather to work as armor, you have to use a lot of it.
And this includes lamellar?
And it would be hard. I don't think there is any evidence of leather lamellar in any context by any people at any time whatsoever.
Okay. Because that one's very popular among reenactment.
Because lamellar works because you have
medieval reenactment
steel or iron plates that are put together in a mesh. The type of armor, the reenactment leather lamellar armor, I am not particularly strong, and I'm not. I'm a good, but I'm not a great cutter. But I will kill you straight through that thing. It wouldn't make much of a difference for me if I was trying to kill you. So why would you want to wear it? The primary weapon of everybody at this age is the spear. It's the stabbing weapon. It wouldn't care. It would go straight through it. So it's basically, if you want leather armor, you have to make it a much more compact than that. You could use something called curiboli, which is basically leather that is boiled in beeswax until it, maybe it's boiled in water. I'm not entirely sure. It's not my field. But you get it to be like plates, and it's thick, and it is much thicker than a similar metal armor would be.
Yeah.
But if you have enough of it, it works. But that would be a stiff and heavy armor. It wouldn't be like the body condoms that people seem to be wearing when they are wearing leather armor in fantasy or yeah, it's fantasy no matter what, but fantasy or Viking. The idea of using something that is kind of akin to belt leather as armor, it wouldn't help. It would have to be something more like the sole of a shoe. Much, much bigger.
Yeah, like boiled hardened leather. Nella actually had, I don't know if this is a joke actually, but actually it's kind of a point. She said she spoke with Icelandic archaeologists medieval, and they complained at how biased the funding towards Viking age is. That's one point, but then it continues. Excluding the black leather pants Uther, son of Uther, wears. Uther, son of, yeah, Uther wears. Do you know about black pants?
Are we talking about the Vikings TV
No,
series?
yeah, probably, but but leather in pants. Would that have been something like, for example, I kind of like, like a blacksmith will use a leather apron to keep the
Well,
fire
leather as
sparks.
opposed
But would you do
to
that with pants, by the way? I was just curious.
leather as opposed to linen and wool is watertight, so you can use it as rain clothing. I don't know if the fines that would be more her department, but it isn't. That isn't completely insane as clothing, but as armor, it wouldn't be armor. It wouldn't be solid enough to actually make much of a difference on the battlefield. So
Robert says, "Don't get me started on the black leather nonsense." And then they go in more. The chat is kind of fun, but actually, I don't know if we were muted at that point. But there's one of my favorite ones anyway is Karl. When we were just starting, or young in our relationship here, that was exceeding beyond a work relationship. I braided the hair of a bunch of people from that were filming in the village, and they look very. Well, they're not historically accurate anyway. And Karl's just walking up and down the hallway shaking his head, and there's these beautiful models that come from the gym, and they're absolutely stunningly gorgeous. And he said, I never wanted to rip the clothes off those women so badly in my life. And I'm like, well, they are kind of pretty and everything like that. And he's like, no, their outfits are so horrible. I just want to rip them off. And I think one of them had a leather skirt with these like pieces hanging down on it.
This is just to kind of illustrate how bad this actually was. Imagine a really, really drunk person watching the entire Pirates of the Caribbean thing and thinking it might be Vikings. And then he Googles Vikings for like 30 seconds, and then it just comes up with the costume. That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
I saw thigh-high leather boots and corsets, and it was absolutely nuts.
Yeah, no, I thought Nella was joking on that one too. Yeah, she definitely is. She said the cut of those leather pants is so modern, and that must be then from the TV show. It's so modern that without a zipper, his private parts wouldn't be very private. We have I was gonna say, because we have one Viking that uses leather pants in the village, but that's because he's a blacksmith. So it kind of makes sense for safety reasons.
If you're protecting yourself from small glowing pieces of metal,
but those were so funny.
Then leather makes sense. Wool is also pretty good flame insulation, but I remember at least one freeman who stood too close to a fire and
it was Randy Stoltz, by the way. Yeah.
Destroyed a wool dress.
Yep.
And I also, my previous cape had lots of holes in it because when we were working the winter, we only had the sea shop. The sea shop is the little shop before we got the mine shop, which is what we use now. And it was so horribly cold in there that what you end up doing is that you take your cape and put it around the oven so that you're sitting inside the heated tent and then just...
So you're heating your balls.
Tourists. But the oven is hot enough to burn through the wool cloth.
Nah, so in the case of Randy, sparks flew up, and because she was sitting maybe too close to the fire or whatever, but a spark flew up, but all she ended up getting was just little holes, burnt holes, because it just peters out. If you ever if you ever tried to burn wool in a fireplace, you'll see it's pretty hard. It'll keep putting itself out.
This isn't really debatable.
No.
If your clothes catch fire, you are too close to the fire.
But I was going to tell the funny story of the blacksmith's pants, though, actually. So they're actually quite cool anyway. But he made them out of leather, but the leather, when you first get it, has like this light brown kind of color, a little bit darker than this. So when he first, and then as they get more exposed to sun and with the waxing and everything, it starts to get darker and darker and darker until it's pretty much this color. But the funny thing was, for about half the summer, he's walking around with these new leather pants made out of this. And we all kept turning our heads because we could have swore why is the blacksmith walking around with any pants on? Because from a distance, it looked like he was walking in the nude. But it was actually the leather pants. But
I didn't notice any
you didn't
nude
know.
blacksmiths.
You weren't staring at the blacksmith as he walks by, and it just so happens to be the same color of his skin. So we. But once it started to get more sun on him anyway, then it started to get darker and darker and darker, and now they look really quite cool. But
So
in the
now we have a
beginning,
nude blacksmith.
yeah, no, if you have to look at old photos, maybe you can see him anyway. It's probably around whenever he made him in like 2018, 2019, I think. Anyway, that was kind of funny. Okay, I have to zip through and see if there's any more questions. You actually have 20 people still hanging on. I'm impressed. Because we are at an hour, almost at an hour overtime now. Oh my god, no, those costumes sounds terrible, says Redisby. There's actually quite a few more people that snuck in here too, and I missed in the first round. Nella says it's also different to have loosely cut leather pants if you would wear on top of your linen pants as reins or even whatever protection. They wouldn't be cut to hug skin. No, and there's a really good reason why you would want to have a linen pants or something to fit underneath. Have you ever seen that episode of Friends where Ross gets a pair of leather pants? Google it. That's why you want to be able to have some fabric between you and leather pants, and you would not wear your leather pants so skin tight. Okay, I'm going to zip through and see if we got all the rest of the questions there. Let's see. Maybe we can get you to tell some stories until we can get Greg to come by, because it won't be until at least summer or spring or late spring that we could get stories from him. Let's see. Someone suggested that if you have no needle, you could use the safety pin. I've tried, it worked. Oh yeah, you can do it with a bobby pin. Like a hairpin, a bobby pin. You could also needle bind with one of those little hair barrettes that you just kind of snap. That would work in a pinch. And there's one guy, oh my god, I forget his name. Absolutely beautiful Nalbinder. He's got like a sweater that is photographed everywhere that does this like braiding effect here in the front anyway. But he's been Nalbinding for, God, well over 20 years, maybe 30. But when he was first trying out the technique and trying to see what he could do with it, and that sweater was the one he actually made, he started at an airport to try this wool that he had just gotten, and he didn't have he wanted to try it so badly, but he didn't have a needle with him, so he made one out of a plastic spoon. And it'll work. There's also the American toothbrush rugs. Those I think are not just purely American, but they're most known in America. And toothbrush rugs are actually a form of needle binding. It's usually some simple looping or simple looping or Danish or double Danish stitch, something like that. And that is made with a toothbrush. You'll notice a lot of toothbrush handles have a hole on the end of it. Actually, looks a bit. It's more comparable to this needle, which is my giant needle. But a toothbrush would be about like that big. And yeah, it's got like a hole on the end, so if you cut off the head and just filed it down, you have a needle.
So, if you ever go to prison, you can still needle bind.
Or kill someone, a shank needle, whatever.
You just have to sacrifice your shank for it.
Yeah, you just have to sacrifice your shank for the greater good. I was going to see, did we get all the questions in? Because Karl will have to make a decision. The furthest north the Vikings would have traveled, said Robert, would have been in Greenland. Viking artifacts have been found around the northern stretches of Baffin Bay. Baffin or Baffin Bay, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Definitely go through the chat, though, when it's up again, because it's really, there's some fun stuff in here. Let's see. I think we got most of them. My son, Prude has been picking out some for me. I got those. Yeah. Anyway, so another plan I have is to, I think I got most of them. So yeah, I have to make a plan. I did post that video last week, by the way, of how I made the yarn from my little yarn scraps. These into that. So you can see that one now. That was kind of fun. There's another, but that actually, when I went to put that together, that was so much easier than I thought. I just kind of filmed it a little bit as I was making the yarn, and then the new iPhone is iPhone 16 now, and with the iMovie thing, it was actually really painless and super easy to put it together. It's not the greatest video in the world, but it was easy, and it did what it was supposed to do. So I will make one for this one as a plan to show that one a little bit more, because I only have a tutorial with pictures from like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And another one I need to do because I'm kind of tired of the question. So that's how usually most things get made. If you get the question off enough, you make a video and just link to the video and say this is how and this is why. So another one is your needles. Everybody asks the question, what size needles is the best to use? You know, long, short. I have so many needles. This is an Audra needle, by the way. And you'll notice it has that follow groove, whereas other ones don't. There's different things for different reasons. I even have plastic needles. Then I've got one that's made from offcuts from the Oseberg board. No, the Gokstad ship. They made a new one. Or was the boat in Tonsberg anyway that they remade?
I'm
Suddenly
assuming you're
just-
talking about the recreation here.
The
You
yeah,
don't
no, the
have an-
recreation of the boat, yeah.
That's not made from wood from the actual Oseberg
No,
ship,
no, no, no.
right?
But they recreated one anyway. Not the actual one, but the one that they recreated. They tried to make a copy of it anyway, and they used oak, and so there's offcuts from that, and then that's what this is, a needle from that, but that's very flat. There's so many
Saga
different ones.
Oseberg.
Saga Oseberg, yeah. When they remade that one, I mean, then you got big holes. There's so many different. Some of them are bent, some of them are anything.
It's kind of an important distinction.
So, and I have to gather all my needles together, and I'll make a little thing about why, at least in my opinion. Some have 2 eyes, some have 1 eye, some are bent, some are round, some are flat, some are long, some are short. It's there's a whole eggplant discussion going on here, but anyway, there's actually a reason for a lot of those features, and it's the wand chooses the wizard, is what I like to say. When you want to know which needle is best. For example, Ann Decker loves to use these little needles, but I have a hard time gripping it, so I had to, because I don't know what I did with my long skinny bone needle. I was trying to switch to this one so it was easier for my hand to grip, but anyway, so that's another plan of something that I've got to make. So I will get there when I get to it, but hopefully within the next 2 weeks. Okay, and I don't know if we had any more last minute questions, so Karl has to, Per Brunberg is the one that makes that sweater, by the way. There you go. And yeah, Radisby loves leftover yarn projects, so many different colors and thicknesses that it looks very cool afterwards. Yeah, leftover yarn projects. Leftover yarn pieces are perfect for Nalbinding, and I absolutely love the thrifty look of them. So that's my favorite kind of thing. If you ever flip through things that I've made, you'll see most of it is leftover yarn. Or my mom will give me something and it's only one skein, so it's not enough to knit anything, but it's perfect for, say, something like this, where you have 2 dye lots of the same wool, but you can't actually make them look like it was intentional. Anyway, okay, so if there was any more last minute questions, you can probably attach it to one of the YouTube posts and just put it in the comments there, and we'll get to it. And Karl will make a decision about what your favorite question was.
Yeah, just give me a list, but leave out the names, so I don't just accidentally repay somebody who's given me bear.
yeah. Anyway, we can still do. I mean, you can still obviously ask them Viking questions as we go throughout, but we'll try to keep them within an hour, so we don't go overtime every time. But how did you like answering all these questions now?
That's fun.
Yeah.
But I seem to be
You're the
both
Viking part of Viking
out
Nalbinding.
of beer and out of questions, so I'm very much contemplating going for another cigarette.
Yeah, no, he's starting to sober up. So you're right, Sodra. Yeah, no, he's starting to sober up. So clearly YouTube's no fun anymore for him. So so we'll log out for today, and we'll be back on Saturday at 6:30 Norway time, because there's nothing on the schedule. I think that says we can't.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no. So it should still be Saturday at 6:30 next week anyway. So, and then hopefully we know who gets the hat. Okay, say goodbye, Karl.
Bye.
Bye-bye.